Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. On today's episode, we're going to be doing part 2, and we're going to be talking about patching the floor for the epoxy coating, so stay tuned. Alright guys, so in this episode we're going to try to tackle these little dimples, cracks, and things that are in the basement floor, mainly because we don't want the finished product, or actually we don't want a bunch of epoxy going to waste and filling the crack, which is kind of why you have the patch kit. But anyways, before we get into that, we're going to tackle the big crack that's along the back side of the basement where the floor meets the wall. So there's a pretty big separation there. It's probably about a quarter to a half an inch that was there previously. Looks like it sunk a little bit, but anyways, previous owner looks like they had somebody come up and fix it, and they looks like they injected some foam or something down into the concrete. Not sure what it is, but raised it back up a little bit. So it looks like it's pretty much there now. But anyways, we want to fill this crack or fill this joint and seal it before we get the epoxy, mainly because multiple reasons. One, you definitely want a good seal on it. Obviously, because you don't want gases, water, dirt, whatever coming up through it, right? And two, you also don't want, when you do the flooring epoxy, you don't want a bunch of epoxy just going into that crack, because that's pretty much the main item, and you don't want to just be wasting a bunch of epoxy going to the crack. So anyways, we went to the depot, the home center, and we picked up this Quikrete advanced polymer self-leveling sealant. It comes in a tube, kind of like caulk. They have bigger sizes, but the standard size, and it's advanced polymer self-leveling. I guess you don't really need to get the self-leveling, but depending on where application is. But we got this and we put it in a caulk gun. You can see here we're going to try to fill in the crack. But anyways, quick hints here. This thing was roughly around $6 or $7, but depending on how many cracks you got or whatever you're trying to fill, make sure, if you're going to do a lot of it, get one of those caulk guns that have a trigger and a battery operated one, because man, your hand will be tired. All right, I've done a lot of caulking before, but your hand will be tired. I think for this one it took roughly about 2 tubes, so it wasn't that bad. But another tip is, when you cut the end, make sure you cut it depending on your application. Obviously, if you're trying to fill a giant hole, just cut a big one, because it will just be a lot easier to squeeze out. But this stuff is pretty liquefied, and it seems like it levels out really well. So we took that, seal along the back end before we went ahead and got started patching the floor. So here we go. Alright guys, so we're going to move on to the patching the concrete. But anyways, in the concrete, the basement floor, I showed earlier, there's a bunch of dimples, cracks, and even hairline cracks and stuff like that. And you want to patch some of that up, because you don't want that to come through when you do the epoxy. But anyways, when we ordered the kit, we ordered the patch kit, EPK-1000, I think is the model number. And the patch kit, I think it was roughly around $65 extra. On the website, it's a picture with a yellow top, but for some reason when I got it, it was a green top. Anyways, not too big, not too much of a matter. But when you order the patch kit, it comes, there's like another smaller bucket lid type thing in there, which holds a lot of the harder resin. And this resin is a little bit hard. It's almost about the consistency of dried out Play-Doh. That's pretty much the texture it is. So when you mix it, you're supposed to mix it with a 2-to-1 ratio with the hardener. This is pretty much epoxy. It's all clear epoxy. But I don't want to use all of it, right? So if you don't want to use all of it, I strongly recommend you go get yourself like a measuring cup bucket type thing from the depot, so you can measure out the quantities, or some other way to measure it. That did not come in the installation kit. But if you have a lot of cracks and dimples and stuff, sure, you can probably mix all of it, but most of you people doing it probably don't have concrete floors that bad, or wherever you can use it that bad. So like I said, I didn't want to use all of it, so I measured some of it out and I mixed it up. It becomes very difficult to measure out, mainly because the resin is so hard. Remember, consistency of dried Play-Doh. They expect you to put it all in the bucket and mix it, but hey, we don't want to use all of it, right? I wanted to save some for future applications or patching other stuff somewhere around. Anyways, this is epoxy. When I took it out and mixed it, like I said, it's very hard, so you need pretty strong mixer. I kind of used the paddle mixer thing that came in the kit on a drill. So that's key thing to note here. You're supposed to mix it for quite a bit. Make sure you check your drill battery before you start mixing it, or else it's going to be dead in the middle, and then you're going to be rushing around to find another battery. So make sure you do that first before you do that, because that happened to me and I don't want that to happen to you. So anyways, it's a little bit harder to mix because consistency of harder Play-Doh. But anyways, you're supposed to mix it for about 2 to 3 minutes, but don't mix it too long, primarily because it starts to harden right away. I've seen a lot of other people mix like patching stuff, not from this company, but from other companies, on like a small, I forget what we call it, like a trowel paddle thing that people use for drywalling. That's going to be really hard with this, primarily because, like I said, really consistency of Play-Doh. So anyways, when you mix it, make sure you start getting it down on the ground right away because it starts to harden. So work with it. So anyways, pour all the pieces together. Measuring the hardened resins can be a little bit hard because it's not liquid, so you kind of got to pound it into the cup and harden it out, or not harden it out, but flatten it out. So make sure you mix it right, because if you don't get the consistency or the mixture ratio right, it won't be disastrous depending on how bad you get it, but most of you guys will probably get it right. So anyways, mix it, start patching it. It didn't come with a spatula type thing to patch it with, so you do need to go get yourself like a putty knife or something like that. I luckily had one from when I was doing drywalling, so I just kind of use that. Go around, patch all the holes, even the hairline cracks, because when you put like liquefied epoxy over it, it'll just show through, so you don't want anything that you don't want to show through. Make sure you just patch it up. I had a lot left, or a little bit more left than I wanted or expected after patching, so I just kind of used it on some of the bigger holes or cracks that are in the wall part. You probably don't need that, but I didn't want it to go to waste, so I just stuck it on there. Who knows, maybe it'll be harder, maybe it'll be stronger, whatever. Anyways, go do that. Alright guys, so one thing I forgot to mention before starting all of this was, before you do any of this patching, epoxying, whatever, you have to make sure the floor is very clean. We did mention in part 1 how we took a 4.5 inch grinder and took a quick layer, just a skim layer off the top of the concrete to make sure it's clean, get rid of rust stains, oil, dirt, whatever it was. But the problem is, even after you do that, even with the dust collection system, the concrete is very, 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 cannot stress, it's very dusty. So we went over it with the shop vac, same dust extraction system, and it was extremely dusty. We went over it probably somewhere between 5 to 10 times with the floor squeegeeing, and was still very dusty. It didn't work very well. We also used a blower to try to get it mostly out the window with the big fan. That also didn't work. So what we ended up doing, we kind of used a Swifter with the wet mop, and got a whole pack of those wet mop Swifter pads or whatnot from Costco, and we used it to wipe it all up. And it seems like you need to do a combination of both. You need to vacuum up as much as you can, and you'll see, even if you vacuum up as much as you can, there, just run your hand across it and look at your hand, and you'll see there's still a lot of white dust in the bottom of your hand. So make sure you get it all clean. The best way to really do it is get a pressure washer and kind of wash it all out. But in this situation, since I'm kind of in the basement and there's no real way to get the water out, I'm not about to just flood this basement, right? So if you have a way to pressure wash it, do that. Like if you're in a garage, do that. But if you're in the basement, you can't really control where the water's going to exit the building or exit the room, your best option is to wet mop it. So wet mop it, I didn't really show that because nobody, and we recorded, but nobody really wants to see wet mopping. But just wet mop it and get as much of it out as you can. And after you wet mop it, make sure you run over it with the vacuum just one more time, because there will be little tiny hairs and stuff that are caught from the pad onto the concrete. So after that, we did this. Sorry, I forgot to mention that. But anyways, this is pretty much what it looks like. Alright guys, so it's been 48 hours, it's been drying. The patch that we applied to the ground is hard as a rock. Just touch it, come back, hit it, whatever it is, hard as a rock. So anyways, now we're going to be applying the primer. So when you order the kit, make sure you check the box and to order the primer kit. And don't worry, this is not a sponsored video. No one's paying us to say this. We're not sponsored by this company. We're not related to this company in any way. You don't even have to buy from this company, but wherever you get your flooring epoxy thing from, make sure you order the primer kit. The primer kit helps in so many ways. Cannot stress how important this is. So the primer kit is pretty much just really, really, really thinned out epoxy, and it pretty much does the first bonding pretty much component on the floor. So the concrete right now is very porous, and because there's obviously no sealer or anything on there. So if you just do the main coat without the primer, you're going to get a lot of like air bubbles and fishhole eyes and stuff, and you may not even get a great color. So one thing I noticed about this, you'll probably see later, is that this really starts to set the color of the kit, or whatever color you want it to show. So like I said, it comes in with two of those hardeners in like the oil type canisters at the same time when you get them in your car, and also comes with a quart canister of the resin. So just mix it all, mix it for about 3 minutes, and then pour it on the ground right away. This is really, really liquefied, so make sure before you mix any of this that you have the tools ready to go. So the squeegee thing, make sure you have it on like a broomstick or some other extension pole, because you do not want to be on your knees with that thing. It does not come with the extension pole. Make sure you get your own extension pole. If you don't have one, just get like a 1/2 inch PVC and just tape it on there or whatnot. If you don't have that, just get a broomstick and connect it with the broomstick. So the squeegee thing does not have the threads in it for it to be in there, so you do have to tape it. Okay, unless you have whatever device or long pole thing it comes from. So I just took the stick off the broom, taped it on there, and that was good. And also make sure you get your the roller ready to go. You don't really need to do this, but I took an extra piece of like Gorilla Tape or whatnot and just tried to get as much of the lint off of the roller as I could ahead of time. Like I said, you don't need to do that, but I did just for mine and safety's sake. It was pretty good. Anyways, the roller, make sure it comes with the roller brush or whatever the rolling pad, or I forgot what you call it, the roller itself, but it does not come with the frame for the roller, and it does not come with the extension pole. Make sure you get that, and try not to use the same one you use for the squeegee, because you're going to be wasting time just trying to switch on and off, right? So make sure you have 2 extension kits or broomsticks or whatever, and those ready to go before you start mixing it. So mix for about 3 minutes, mix all the parts together, pour it out. Roughly as evenly as you can, I guess. Doesn't matter too much because you're going to be squeezing it, but make sure you pour it in strategic areas where you're going to be squeezing it from. What I found is that you probably want to get it roughly about 2 feet away from the wall. Just pour like a good solid line, because you need to move the product close to the wall and then squeeze it backwards. So the basic idea here is pour it all out on the concrete, you squeegee it to the areas you need, and then after you squeegee all of it, we're gonna use the roller and just go over it real quick to just even it out, get an even coat. And I'm not sure the texture really matters too much because this is gonna self-level, but to make sure you just even out and get a clean coat everywhere. So that's pretty much what's happening here. You gotta work fast, don't rush, but work fast. In this area, I used the spike shoes that came with the kit. You just assemble it, tie it on, whatnot. It's interesting, there were like no instruction with any of this, but common sense kind of figures it out. I wore it so that I don't have to worry about where I'm going to step as much. You still have to worry, but you don't have to worry about it as much. So like I said, pour it out, squeegee it as evenly as you can, and then back roll it with the roller. And you'll kind of see here, I kind of made it a way where I could work myself out through the door, mainly because sure, you could step on it with the spike shoes, but it kind of just gave you also a better sense of what area you've already covered very well and whatever area you didn't. So most of the time here was spent with just squeezing it out, and at the end you just kind of roll it over real quick. Rolling it over is real fast. You're not really painting anything, you're really just trying to get the clean coat everywhere, flatten it out. So here we go. Alright guys, so it's the next day. It's been about 24 hours, and then we're going to be applying the main coat. Alright, so on the main coat, before you do anything with epoxy, even in the primer coat, we did the same thing, but it didn't come out very well. But today this day we have somebody helping me film, so they were able to film this part. But when you do anything with epoxy, make sure you mix, especially part A or the resin first. Make sure you mix it thoroughly, because especially if it has like color and stuff in there, it can start settling, and then you're going to have uneven coats, or the color is not going to match very well, especially because a lot of the color will not get stuck at the bottom of the can or bottom of the bucket or whatnot. So make sure you mix it well. I just kind of used the paint stick to get as much of it out of there as possible, because I wanted to maximize and get the maximum value out of this thing. So make sure you mix it such that the color is uniform throughout. And then I took a Swiffer pad with a dry pad or whatnot and kind of went over little areas on the floor, mainly because there was dust on the floor from our shoes. So if you have a lot of dust, make sure you clean it up somehow. You don't have to get a Swiffer. Don't worry, that's not a Swiffer sponsoring commercial or anything like that. It's just that's what we had. Since we use it upstairs, we just kind of use it down here. And since the floor is kind of like very smooth now, it actually works really, really well. And here we're mixing part A and part B, the two old type cans or things that come in it. I was mixing it as I was pouring it in there. So they say mix it on slow speed so that you don't introduce a lot of air bubbles and you don't have a lot of air pockets and stuff like that. Mix for about straight 3 minutes, and then you need to start pouring it. Then you start squeegeeing it, and then at the end you roll it. And at the end of this part on the main coat, if you have flakes, make sure you throw it on the flakes. But this is pretty much the main coat. You've already done this before with the primer or whatnot, so you already have an experience, or you at least should have an idea of how you're gonna work yourself in or out of the room, or maybe you have some experience or what you learned from doing the primer. Make sure you put that experience to good use. Here I kind of learned that, hey, pour a little bit thinner along the walls, such that when I get to the other side of the wall, I have almost the same amount poured out. That's just all learning experience. So make sure you just learn stuff as you go. Just do it. Wearing the spiked shoes, it's all pretty straightforward. But like I said earlier, before you mix anything, make sure you have all your tools ready to go. In this case, after I did the primer coat that same day, just immediately after I finished it, I took some acetone and then wiped down the squeegees. Remember, you only get 2 squeegees and 2 rollers. I didn't clean the roller. Those are pretty much just one time you just toss out. But the squeegees, you only get 2. If you get the primer, the main coat, and the clear coat, you're 1 squeegee down, right? So just take a cloth, a rag or whatever, a clean rag, put some acetone on it, clean the squeegee, and you need to clean and make sure you get all the epoxy off, because when it gets dried, it gets really hard, and if it's hard, you're not really going to be able to use it. So squeegee, clean it, because you're going to need to use it again. Here, previously I cleaned it, and I'm using the same squeegee on the same broomstick or whatnot. Like I said, when you order the kit, even if you get the installation tools, if you get the primer kit and the clear coat kit, you do not get the extension pole. So I got 2 broom extension poles here, put it on there, and started pulling it out here. So I guess after you start first time doing it, you have an idea of how, like, a better way that the roller or the squeegee thing works, so you have better management of it. And I was trying to see if I can try to go across the whole room with just a bunch of product or whatnot in the squeegee, and just roll it around as much as I could. That wasn't as successful, but hey, you live and you learn. So anyways, you pour it out, like I said, here, just working it all around, just get all around with it, and then at the end, you pour the flakes on it. But when you put the flakes on it, I didn't go really heavy on the flakes. I went fairly light. I mean, because I didn't mind it just look like all flakes, but I did want to put at least some flakes down to make it be more decorative or whatnot, cover up some of the imperfections, and actually, I think it actually looks better than if you're just going just plain. If you're doing like metallic, obviously you don't need the flakes, but this is not a metallic kit, so just went a little bit light on the flakes. But you need to put the flakes down when the epoxy is still leveling out or settling or whatever you want to call it, before it gets really hard. So as soon as you roll it, flake it. I rolled it out in sections so I could flake it, because I didn't want to step on the flakes after I rolled it. That would just don't seem like it would be a good idea. But after, just throw some flakes down. There's a lot of theories on the best way to put the flakes down. You can either throw them up in the air, toss them against the wall, toss them against the ceiling. Just do whatever works for you. There's no right or wrong way. It's just a matter of what style you like, or how you like this flakes dispersed out. I just threw them up in the air, and it landed pretty fine. I went with the green, white, and black flakes, I think it was. I had more than half the bag left over because I went really light on it. We'll show you the finished product later in part 3 or whatnot. But if you're going to go ahead and do this, remember, first check part 1. We did cleaning the concrete and all that stuff. And remember to get 2 extension pole sticks, PVC pipe, or however you're going to do to get the squeegee and the roller going. Remember, it does not come with a wireframe roller or any kind of roller. It comes with just the heads that go on the roller. It's your standard paint roller, 9-inch roller. Just go to your depot or whatnot and just pick it up. And then make sure you have this ready before you mix it. That's the quick thing I learned. Also, when I was doing this, one of the few things I picked up was it's definitely easier to cut in the corners. I don't mean cut in the corners with the paintbrush. I just kind of use the pour it out and just use the squeegee to cut in the corners first, and then you can kind of cover the main areas. That seemed to work the best for me. I'm sure there's better ways to do it, or do whatever works for you. I'll watch a lot of videos, and this is what works for me. According to the video instruction on epoxy-coat.com, it says cut in using the paintbrush. I didn't really feel like doing that. I think it worked out perfectly fine for me using the squeegee, but obviously I had pretty 90-degree corners. It wasn't like any round or anything like that, but even if it was round, the squeegee works fine. So that's what worked for me. Do what works for you. I hope this video helped you guys out. Stay tuned for part 3, where we do show you how it really turned out, and we also do a clear coat and just think over some thoughts and give you some what we thought of the kit, more like a review or whatnot, short-term review, installation review or whatnot. So stay tuned for that. Hope this video helped you guys out, and we'll see you guys guys next time.